So obviously we're looking at one particular app, but there's a whole prevalence of applications and social media software out there that seems to be increasingly used for child abuse material or for actual grooming of children. How far do you think the internet and these kind of applications have exacerbated the problem of child exploitation and child abuse?
It's remarkably hard to know if the problem of child abuse is increasing or if a problem that has always existed in society but been relatively hidden is now moving online. I think what's striking is that online it's a growing problem, and as a making therefore visible something that is clearly a very significant challenge to deal with, and drawing in a kind of new set of organisations who are responsible, namely the internet companies. So the nature of the problem has changed. We really don't know if it's increased.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so there's no data to actually compare the old and the new.
No, we don't really have very good data from different points in the past. I think you see that with the way in which stories come out even, decades later about what the scale of abuse has been in particular parts of the world. What we can see is that where there is abuse, it is much more visible because the images are taken, the images are shared, so that's a kind of extra layer of the problem, and it's very difficult to eradicate them.
Right, yeah. And our story is obviously focusing on Kik and what we found there, and you've read a bit of the story, and I've walked you through some of the particular crimes that we found. So, for instance, the one suspect who was using 200 groups at one time, and that being one suspect seemed pretty striking. What do you make of the scale of that compared to what you've seen across other platforms? To us, it seems quite severe, but maybe you've got a different perspective on it.
It does sound severe, and it does sound like there's a clear case to answer from the point of view of Kik as a company, and a clear need for action. I think what I'd say is that we've seen other apps in this position before in the recent past, and sadly it seems that as efforts are made to kind of clean up and sort out one particular company, the problem moves on to the next. And we see both the perpetrators but also young people who are looking for new kind of transgressive under the radar sites where they can do what teenagers do. We see them kind of moving from app to app as well.
With that in mind, I mean, is it difficult from your perspective for the tech companies themselves to actually start clamping down on the problem, or are they just not doing enough?
Well, it takes a lot to persuade the tech companies to join the kind of multi-stakeholder discussions that are going on. And what we see, I've been part of those multi-stakeholder discussions for quite some time, so we see the big companies now joining and really doing all they can, particularly in relation to illegal sexual contact with children. But there is always the long tail of other companies, and they are starting up all the time. So it takes time to persuade them that there is a problem, that they need to kind of come into the responsible discussion. And by the time they've been drawn into that process, sadly, as I said, they're just not offering such a dodgy, risky service anymore, and so perpetrators go elsewhere.
Right. Yeah. So it's just a
it's a constant evolving process. So what the solution to that is somehow we still need the companies to be responsible, but whether there are other strategies that could be deployed in terms of preventative action to stop crime, that's another question.
Yeah.
I think from the point of view of children and young people, they're always kind of casting around for where the risky, under the radar kind of spaces are.
Yeah. We were discussing a bit before about how say GDPR or some of the government legislation seems to be kind of inadequate in this kind of space to protect children, and some of the measures such as demanding consent or proof just don't seem like they're effective. Is this something that government can control, or is it something that needs to be an industry thing? How, like, what level of
I think it's got to be both. And perhaps we're looking at the the new kind of messenger startups, but maybe we should also be looking more intensely at the internet companies that carry those services.
Okay.
I know in relation to some areas, people are looking at the payment systems or the advertising that funds different services, because all of these are eventually designed to be advertising. Bring in advertising revenue.
Yeah.
So I think there might be other strategies, but I don't give up on the GDPR yet. The intention is to strengthen the data protection authorities, to strengthen the regulation. It might be at the cost of children's freedom to try out any new platform they want.
Right.
It might be at the cost of some market innovation to start up platforms without first getting their kind of regulatory house in order, as it were. We don't know. So I do see a trade-off between responsible action in the marketplace and complete flexibility to innovate.
Yeah. And what's the actual problem with the GDPR when it comes to protecting children's data as far as you see it at the minute? Because obviously we've got, what is it, a year, I think?
We've got a year to, yes. Well, so the lawyers are telling me that the GDPR itself is insufficiently clear in whether or not it permits data profiling for children, and what kind of compliance pressures are going to be on the companies to ensure that they do get parental consent. But right now, from the point of view of children, Article 8 says that anyone under 16 cannot use any information service that collects their data on a commercial basis without parental consent, and we just don't know. So what are the mechanisms for getting parental consent? What are going to be the penalties on the companies? They're all meant to do advanced risk assessments, which is interesting, because if KIC had done a risk assessment, it would absolutely foresee that potential abusers would meet teenagers. And then it wouldn't, in principle, it couldn't even have begun its service.
Right. So you think that, say, startups, say you've got new companies coming into this space, they should be doing risk assessments for this exact sort of usage of their application?
They should be doing risk assessments in advance of offering a service to anticipate what the possible downsides are, including unintended consequences, unanticipated users. Just as happens if you build a new road, or you put out a new food product, or you build a new car. I mean, you imagine the unintended as well as your planned costs and risks, and you build that in. So what company could possibly develop a service and not realise kids will use it?
Yeah. And does it look to you like KIC may not have done enough of a risk assessment?
It looks to me like KIC has not done any kind of a risk assessment. Yes, if they've allowed for anonymous communication without sufficient privacy and safety controls, and they, as I understand it, are not especially responsive when complaints or problems are reported to them.
So once you've created this kind of application, talking specifically about KIC, you have a massive problem on the site. You know that there are a lot of different uses of it, completely illegal uses of it. What do you do when you've got hundreds of millions of users and it's already done, it's already out there? Is there anything you can change as a company, or are you just putting out fires constantly? Is that?
Well, no, they could change things. Yes, absolutely. They could build in much more responsive mechanisms in terms of privacy and safety to allow people to block. They could provide warnings. If you look at some of the other companies which have now, do give you periodic privacy reminders, of what are the ways in which your data is being used.
Such as Facebook, I guess, is the obvious.
Such as Facebook is the obvious one, has tried very hard in this regard. So then we should separate the two problems, which is the child who doesn't understand the environment they're in, doesn't realise they're giving away their data or placing themselves at risk. They can be helped by those services. Okay, so the child who is looking to be deliberately transgressive and perhaps put themselves at risk because of whatever problems they have in their lives, that child might not be deterred and might even be attracted by such a site that has warnings. So there are different ways in which children come into risk and different kinds of solutions that they need.
Yeah, there's a business interest, I guess, right? If you can provide a safe platform for children will hopefully flock to it, and you'll have a bigger user base.
So we did see that with Habbo Hotel. which
course, yeah,
absolutely put in all the resources, provided the safe service, took their eye off the ball, cut the number of moderators, as I understood it, and in came the abusers.
Yeah, Amber Hotel was a bit of a disaster from what I
Yeah,
remember.
and then Ask FM, was a more recent case where, again, it was exactly a place for anonymous meetups and all kinds of transgressive and illicit activity. It's now much safer. My understanding is kids are not going there anymore.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, it'd be great to see that with Kick, because it's been a good couple of years and people have been highlighting these problems. So it's probably about time that it would hopefully start to curb the issue, but it doesn't seem to.
The other place that no one really talks about, that where some action could be taken, would be in the App Store and Google Play.
Yeah.
Because all apps go through them, is my understanding.
Yeah, of course,
and they put on age limits, which are often quite surprising. And they could also make a judgment about what is safe and what is appropriate and what kind of warning would the service come with. And they currently, I believe, don't.
So even Apple and Google could be doing a little bit more when it comes to
They are part of the pathway that allows all of these new startup apps without adequate services reaching children.
There has never been a more important time to support independent media and investigative journalism. So if you like the work we do, then subscribe to our channel, send us tips, and most importantly, if you can, pledge to our Patreon and help keep us going and keep us uncovering these stories. Cheers.